everyone, especially to Dr. Nila Villaver and my classmates. By the way, my name is Doraima B. Pacaso, and I will be the first supporter for Chapter 7, which is all about effective strategy implementation. This topic is composed of 4 subtopics, and these are: number 1, we will be talking about managing structure and strategy. Number 2, we will be talking about Chandler's thesis. Number 3, we will also be talking about the 7S model. And number 4, we will also be talking about institutionalizing strategy. But before we are going to begin with our topic this afternoon, let's try to watch this video.
Matching structure and strategy is an important task for managers, as it ensures that the organization is configured in a way that supports the achievement of its strategic objectives. Actually, there are some considerations, or let's say key considerations, for matching structure and strategies.
First, we have to consider the strategic objectives.
Number 1, the organizational structure should always support the achievement of the organization's strategic objectives. So, for example, if the strategic objectives is to be a low-cost producer, then the structure may need to be centralized to achieve economies of scale. Pero if the strategic objectives is to be an innovator, then the structure may need to be decentralized to foster creativity and, of course, experimentation.
Now, after we have been able to analyze the strategic objectives, we will now be able to analyze the strategic environment.
The organizational structure should be designed to respond to the external environment in which the organization operates. So, for example, if the industry is highly regulated, the structure may need to be centralized to ensure compliance. But if the industry is rapidly changing, the structure may need to be flexible and, of course, adaptable to respond to new opportunities and, of course, challenges.
After that one, we are going to evaluate the organization's resources.
To evaluate the organization's resources, the organizational structure should be designed to leverage the organization's resources and capabilities. So, for example, if the organization has a strong R&D department, so the structure may need to be decentralized to give the R&D department more autonomy and flexibility.
After that one, we will be able to consider the organization's structure.
In this key consideration, the organizational structure should be aligned with the organization's culture and values. So, for example, if the organization values teamwork and collaboration, then the structure may need to be decentralized to encourage cross-functional collaboration.
After the first 4 components, of course, we will now evaluate the current resources.
To evaluate the current structure, the current organizational structure should be evaluated rather, to determine its strengths and weaknesses. So this will help managers to identify areas where the structure needs to be modified or kumbaga i-improve to support the strategic objectives. So, by considering these factors, of course, the managers can develop an organizational structure that is aligned with the organization's strategic objectives, external environment, resources, what they put culture, and current structure. So, this will help ensure that the organization is configured in a way that supports the achievement of its strategic objectives.
Now let's talk about the second topic, which is all about Chandler's theory. Now let's move on to the second topic, which is all about the Chandler's theory or Chandler's thesis. So Chandler's thesis is also known as the structure follows strategy theory. This is actually a management theory that is developed by historians and, of course, the scholar himself, Alfred Chandelier around 1960s. So in his thesis, he suggested that the organization structure should be designed to support and implement the chosen strategy.
Well, according to Chandler's thesis, a firm's strategy should drive its organizational structure rather than the way around. So, meaning, a firm or a certain firm should first determine its strategic objectives and then design an organizational structure of that supports the implementation of those objectives. So, kumbaga, we should make sure that we will be able to determine its strategic objectives, and then after that one, we can be able to design an organizational structure. So, for example, a firm that wants to compete on cost may choose to centralize its operation in order to achieve economies of scale. Pero, if a certain firm wants to compete on innovation, that firm should choose to decentralize decision making in order to foster creativity or even experimentation.
So if we are going to look at the whole concept of Chandelier's theory, so in conclusion, we can say that his theory wanted us to know that there should be a connection between structure and strategy, even though it's very complicated nowadays. And he hoped and suggests that these two concepts should be intertwined, connected with one another. Even if it's too hard and it's not as easy as 1, 2, and 3. Now let's talk about the third topic, which is all about the Mackenzie's 7S model. So Mackenzie's 7S model is actually a change framework in organizational design. So meaning to say, it is being called as a 7S model because it is composed of 7 key elements. And what are those 7 key elements? We have structure, we have strategy, shared values, skills, style, staff, and the like. Alright? So, we will be able to talk about that one by one later. FYI, the 7S framework is divided or has been categorized into 2 elements. And these are the hard elements and the soft elements. So what are the difference between the two? When we say hard elements, these are those types of elements that can easily be seen or is tangible and is influenced by either leaders or even the management. On the contrary, when you say soft elements, these are those elements that is intangible and is culture driven. Alright, so let's start with the hard elements.
The strategy element is a detailed plan that organizations create for successful change implementation and to gain a competitive edge. So, a well crafted strategy is aligned with the other 6 elements of the 7S model and is reinforced by a strong vision, mission, and of course, its values. So, I must highlight vision, mission, and values kay magkuyog yun ng tulo when it comes to strategy. Structure, or commonly known as organizational structure, refers to a clear chain of command to avoid chaos and confusion. So, structure is simple yet crucial element as it creates a sense of employee accountability within the organization. So, it is not just about the employer but of course the employee's accountability within a certain organization, because there are some people who would say it's all about the employer, but they don't know that there is when it comes to structure, there is what we call the employee accountability. systems refers to the business processes and operational procedures employed to complete a business routine activities. So organizations' SOPs consist of practices and workflows that directly impact productivity and of course decision making. At the end of the day, SOPs is very much important in a certain organization.
Now this time, we are going to dissect the soft elements.
There are core values governing an organization's health. While implementing a change, of course, organizations expect a behavioral modification from their employees, which is only possible in a strong change culture and organizational values. Again, it's not just about the employees, but of course, it's all about the employer. So it's not just about there is a modification in a certain organization by the employees, but also there is a modification among employers as well. So in order to have a positive core values or organization's health, of course, the employees should have a strong change culture and organizational values. Style is an element refers to the management style prevalent in a company that decides the level of employee productivity and of course satisfaction. So each employee, as far as I know, has its own productivity level. So of course, the soft element called style will determine the level of employee productivity and of course satisfaction. This element represents the talent pool required, the size of existing workforce, and of course their motivation. It also considers how they are trained and of course rewarded within the organization. So of course, as we all know, in every organization there is reward system, of course training system among all the employees in order for them to be honed with the skills that is needed in the organization. Skills refer to the abilities of an employee to complete a task. So there is a study that I have been able to read that suggests that 45% of respondents reported that a skill gap caused a loss in productivity. When you say skill gaps, this is the overburdened experienced employees who have to pick up the slack for their coworkers' inexperience. Okay, as we all know, not all of our co-employees are well experienced or they are experienced enough. So of course we have to make sure that we will be able to help them manage their expectations, and of course we will be able to help them reach the common goal in the company or in a certain organization. So it's essential to identify the skill gaps and of course to create relevant employee training programs para makuan ang bridge among these gaps.
Well, yes, I understand that you might be able to ask me, how can we implement the 7S model? Now, let's have the following steps. Number 1, we have to identify the gaps and of course the unaligned processes.
First in mind, in order for us to implement McKinsey's 7S model, is to identify the gaps and align processes. So when identifying the gaps and inconsistencies in your organizational existing business process, we should be able to list out unaligned areas, as well as what needs to change or either to restore in order to have an effective balance.
Now, for number 2, you have to make sure that you are going to determine the organization design.
This step is research intensive and requires change leaders to find the sweet spot where management's vision of an optimal organizational design aligns with the sentiments across the rest of the team members.
And of course, for the third step, which is one of the most important, you have to create an action plan.
So after identifying the outliers, change agents must create a detailed implementation plan. So importante kayo implementation plan during this time. So the action plan should include required changes to the organization's hierarchy, its communication flow, and reporting relationship, which will allow the company to achieve the desired organizational design.
And after that one, we have to make sure that we will be able to implement all the changes that we have been able to apply.
So the change implementation stage is the most critical stage of any change initiative. And only well-implemented changes will avoid resistance to change and prevent overall change failures. So we should be able to identify internal change agents or even hire change consultants best suited to implement these changes. So as we all know, when there is a change, of course, there is improvement or room for improvement, no? So it is to prevent overall change failures and to achieve positivity in the organization.
Last but never the least, of course, we have to make sure to maintain the momentum of the continuous process design.
So the last one is to maintain the momentum with continuous review processes. As we all know, McKinley's 7S model are highly dynamic and it can change constantly because as we all know, again, change is the only constant in this world. So therefore, practitioners must track these elements and their impact on one another to maintain the momentum of change.
To sum up the lesson for this afternoon, let's try to watch this video. So that would be all for this afternoon session. Thank you so much for listening. I hope and pray that you learned something this afternoon. That would be all. Bye!